The courtroom was tense. The jury leaned forward. The prosecutor paced, certain the case was already won. And then it happened. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. The defendant, Sylvester Rowe, 40 years old, stood up. His shackled hands trembled, but his voice did not. "You don't get to judge me," he said, glaring at the man in the black robe. The room stilled. "Because 20 years ago," Sylvester continued, "you were the one who put the drugs in our neighborhood. You were the one who made us criminals before we ever had a choice." Gasps, murmurs. The judge's gavel slammed, but the echo couldn't drown the truth. For the first time, the trial wasn't about Sylvester. It was about the judge. Sylvester Rowe was born and raised on the east side of Baltimore, Maryland. The neighborhood was rough. Abandoned row houses. Corner boys hustling. Police sirens at night. But Sylvester was different. At least he tried to be. He worked part-time at an auto shop. Took care of his younger sister after their mother died. Everyone said he had potential, until the night it all unraveled. On October 4th, 2020, Sylvester was arrested outside a convenience store. Charges: armed robbery, aggravated assault, and attempted murder. The victim, a shopkeeper who barely survived a gunshot wound. Police claimed Sylvester matched the description. Witnesses pointed to him. His fingerprints were found on a gun dumped in a trash can nearby. To the community, it looked like another black man caught in the system. To prosecutors, it was an open-and-shut case. But to Sylvester, it was a setup. The store on Franklin Street was small, family-run, its windows plastered with posters for lottery tickets and soda deals. On the night of the shooting, the security cameras weren't working, out for repair. The owner later admitted. Around 9:40 p.m., a man entered with a ski mask, demanded cash, and pulled the trigger when the shopkeeper hesitated. The robber fled, leaving the shopkeeper bleeding behind the counter. By the time paramedics arrived, the victim was clinging to life. He survived, but his memory was hazy. Tall, black, hoodie, he muttered. That was enough for the police to start sweeping the area. Within an hour, Sylvester was in cuffs. Detectives built their case quickly. Too quickly. They claimed Sylvester's hoodie matched the suspects. They said a neighbor saw him running. They produced a gun from a nearby alley with Sylvester's partial prints. But the pieces didn't fit neatly. The neighbor later admitted he wasn't sure. The hoodie had no blood or residue. The prints on the gun were smudged, incomplete. Still, prosecutors pressed forward. And then came the judge's assignment. Honorable Daniel Whitaker. Judge Daniel Whitaker, 62 years old, was a man with presence. Silver hair combed back. Blue eyes sharp as glass. To the public, he was respected. A veteran of the bench, known for his tough-on-crime rulings. But to many in Baltimore's black community, his name carried a different weight. They remembered his rulings in the 1990s. Long sentences for minor drug offenses. Entire families broken by his court. And now, fate had placed Sylvester before him. The trial opened in February 2021. The prosecution painted Sylvester as a career criminal. He's been in and out of trouble since he was 16, the prosecutor said. And now he nearly killed a man for pocket change. The defense, underpaid and overworked, struggled. They argued there was no clear evidence that Sylvester had an alibi. He was working late at the auto shop, but the shop owner refused to testify, afraid of police retaliation for covering. The jury shifted uncomfortably. And through it all, Judge Whitaker presided, cold and stern. Outside the courthouse, protests grew. "Free Sylvester," signs waved in the cold. Community leaders shouted through megaphones about racial profiling, planted evidence, and the cycle of mass incarceration. Reporters covered the spectacle. To some, Sylvester was guilty. To others, he was another black man railroaded by the system. Midway through the trial, the defense received an anonymous envelope. Inside, photocopies of old court transcripts from the 1990s. Cases where Judge Whitaker had presided. The names were familiar. Men from Sylvester's neighborhood. Men who went away for decades on possession charges. And scribbled in the margins of one file, Ask him about the raids. Sylvester's memory sparked. Back when he was a teenager, police stormed his block. Raids almost weekly. Drugs turning up in houses that had been cleaned the day before. And every time, the cases went through one courtroom. Judge Whitaker's. It was a pattern, a machine, a system designed not for justice, but for quotas. Sylvester realized the man judging him wasn't just a figure in a robe. He was part of the story. On the 10th day of trial, tension boiled over. The prosecutor mocked Sylvester on cross-examination. You expect us to believe you're innocent? You've been in trouble since you were a kid. You've lived your whole life in crime. Sylvester's jaw clenched. His hands trembled, and then he snapped. He stood, chains clinking. His voice echoed across the courtroom. You don't get to talk about my life. And you, he turned, pointing at Judge Whitaker. The gallery gasped. You don't get to judge me either, because I remember you. I remember the raids. I remember how the drugs showed up out of nowhere. And I remember the boys who never came back home. Because of you. The room exploded with whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously. Whitaker's gavel pounded, his face pale. Silence in my courtroom. But the silence was already broken. The jury was shaken. Some stared at Whitaker, not Sylvester. The defense scrambled, demanding an inquiry into the judge's past rulings. The prosecutor objected furiously. Reporters swarmed outside. Defendant accuses judge of corruption. Baltimore court in chaos. Community leaders cheered. We've been saying it for years, one activist said. The system is rigged. And now the truth is out from inside the courtroom itself. Whispers spread. In the 90s, Baltimore police had indeed been caught in corruption scandals. Planting evidence, running drugs, framing suspects. Several officers were convicted, but the judges? They were never touched. Until now, files emerged linking Whitaker to officers under investigation. He had overseen dozens of their cases. And in nearly every one, the defendants were young black men. Sylvester's accusation was no longer just outburst. It was a question. As the trial paused for judicial review, the city held its breath. Was Sylvester guilty of the robbery? Or was he another pawn in a system run by men like Whitaker? The gavel had fallen, but the truth was only beginning to rise. And in the shadows of Baltimore, old files whispered secrets that could topple more than just one judge. The courtroom silence carried into the streets. By the next morning, headlines blared. Defendant accuses judge of secret role in 90s drug scandals. Baltimore courtroom in chaos. Did Judge Whitaker protect dirty cops? Outside the courthouse, protesters doubled in number. Signs now targeted the judge, not just the system. Who judges the judge? End the Whitaker era. For decades, Whitaker had been untouchable. Now his name was poison. Sylvester's public defender, Janelle Price, had been overwhelmed from day one. Underfunded, overworked, juggling caseloads in the hundreds. But Sylvester's outburst gave her an opening she never expected. She filed an emergency motion, conflict of interest, judicial misconduct. Her argument: if Whitaker had history with Sylvester's neighborhood, if he had presided over corrupt cases in the 90s, then he could not be impartial. The prosecution scoffed. This is a distraction. An accused shooter is trying to save himself by throwing mud at the bench. But the seed had been planted. Malik Turner, a local journalist, smelled blood in the water. He'd covered Baltimore courts for years, chasing scraps of truth through bureaucratic stone walls. Whitaker had always been a ghost, connected, careful, clean. But Sylvester's words unlocked a memory. A file from 1996. A raid on the very block Sylvester grew up on. Dozens arrested. Drugs found. All cases fast-tracked through Whitaker's courtroom. Malik dug deeper. Of the 40 men arrested, 31 were convicted. Every one of them black. And years later, several of the arresting officers had been exposed for planting evidence. Yet the conviction stood. Why? Because Judge Whitaker signed them. In chambers, Whitaker raged. This is slander. Lies from a career criminal. I will not have my name dragged through the mud. But even his clerk noticed a change. The once arrogant judge now kept blinds drawn, voice shaking. Rumors swirled that federal investigators were reviewing old cases. Lawyers filed motions to reopen convictions. Whitaker had built his reputation on order. Now, chaos crept into his world. In jail, Sylvester replayed his words. He hadn't planned it. It just erupted. Years of pain, injustice, anger, boiling over in one courtroom. His fellow inmates whispered, "Man, you shook the whole system." But Sylvester knew the danger. Calling out a judge wasn't just rebellion. It was suicide, legally, maybe physically. And yet, he felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. Amid the uproar, the robbery victim resurfaced. Mr. Patel, the shopkeeper, testified again. I'm not sure anymore, he said softly. That night is foggy. I thought it was him. But now I don't know. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The prosecution slammed the table. He's trying to backtrack. He's scared of the community. But the jury heard it. Doubt. For the first time, the case against Sylvester cracked. Then came a twist. Police announced they'd arrested another man, a local known as Deshaun, caught with a stolen gun. The gun matched the caliber from the store shooting. Had Sylvester been framed? Or was this a ploy to muddy the waters? Reporters swarmed. Whitaker's courtroom teetered between circus and collapse. One night, Malik Turner received an anonymous email. Attached, scanned pages of a sealed court document. It was from 1995. A confidential informant had testified that drugs were being planted by officers in East Baltimore. With the approval of a judge, the name was redacted, but one line stood out. The Honorable D. Whit, cut off by the black marker. It wasn't proof, but it was smoke. And where there was smoke, back in court, Sylvester's attorney demanded Whitaker recuse himself. The judge's face turned crimson. This is my courtroom. I will not step aside. Sylvester stood again, voice steady. You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of the truth. You put men away who never should have been locked up. You destroyed families. And now you want to destroy me, to keep your secret buried. The gallery erupted. Reporters nearly leapt over benches. Whitaker slammed his gavel, so hard the handle snapped. Remove him, he roared. But Sylvester's words lingered in the air like smoke after fire. Days later, U.S. Marshals arrived at Whitaker's chambers. Not to arrest him, not yet, but to serve notice. He was under federal review. The judge who once commanded silence now faced questions of his own. Baltimore split in two. Some saw Sylvester as a hero, pulling the mask off decades of corruption. Others called him manipulative, guilty, a criminal using conspiracy to escape justice. Radio shows debated. Churches preached. Barbershops buzzed. The case was no longer just state versus Sylvester Rowe. It was Baltimore versus its own history. On the 15th day of trial, just as the defense prepared closing arguments, a new witness appeared. A retired cop, gray-haired, nervous. He took the stand, voice trembling. I was there in '96. Those raids, they weren't clean. We were told where to put the drugs. And the orders came from higher up, from the courthouse itself. The gallery froze. Which judge? The defense attorney asked. The man's eyes darted. He whispered, Whitaker. Chaos. Reporters shouting. Jurors stunned. The judge pale as paper. Whitaker banged his gavel, but his voice cracked. This testimony is inadmissible. But the damage was done. The secret was no longer whispers. And as Sylvester stared at the man who had ruled his fate, he realized something chilling. The robbery case wasn't the real trial. The real trial was about the judge. And someone powerful, unseen, was working desperately to keep Whitaker's secret buried. The courtroom shook after the retired cop's words. Orders came from the courthouse itself. From Judge Whitaker. Reporters nearly leapt over benches. The jury gasped. And Judge Whitaker, normally stone-faced, looked like a man watching his empire crumble. This testimony is inadmissible, he roared. Strike it from the record. But the damage was irreversible. Within hours, the city buzzed. Talk radio hosts shouted, Is Baltimore's justice system built on lies? Community leaders called for a mistrial. Protesters outside the courthouse grew louder. And behind the scenes, Whitaker's allies scrambled. Phone calls to City Hall. Hush meetings in quiet restaurants. Control the story, they whispered. Discredit the witness. Destroy Sylvester before the spreads. In his holding cell, Sylvester replayed the moment in his head. For years, he'd felt powerless. Another black man swallowed by the system. But now, he had pulled the mask off the man in power. His lawyer, Janelle Price, warned him, "You made waves, but waves drown people. They'll come for you harder now." Sylvester stared through the bars. "Then let them. I'm not dying with the secret buried." Mr. Patel, the shopkeeper, returned to court. His testimony had already wavered. Now, under cross-examination, cracks widened. I thought it was him. But maybe I was wrong." The prosecutor's voice was sharp. "Sir, you identified Mr. Rowe the night of the shooting." Patel's eyes darted. "That night was chaos. I was bleeding. I don't know anymore." The jury shifted uneasily. Doubt spread like wildfire. Federal investigators arrived at the courthouse, led by Special Agent Karen Mitchell of the DOJ. They opened sealed files, dug into old convictions, interviewed former officers. Patterns emerged. Dozens of drug cases routed through Whitaker. Evidence found under suspicious circumstances. Harsh sentences that fed the prison pipeline. Mitchell's voice was grim. "This isn't just misconduct. This looks systemic. Organized." Whitaker called a press conference. Cameras flashed. "I have served Baltimore with integrity for over 3 decades. These accusations are lies. Fabrications by criminals and desperate men. I will not be intimidated." His words were firm, but his eyes betrayed panic. Behind him, Dalton and Myers LLP, a powerful law firm, announced they would defend his honor. But the cracks were spreading. In the jury room, whispers grew. "If he's tied to dirty cops, can we trust any of this evidence? What if they come after us for siding with Sylvester?" Some jurors reported intimidation, anonymous phone calls, cars following them home. The trial wasn't just law. It was war. Journalist Malik Turner dug deeper. Through an old source, he obtained a list of payments. Cash transfers routed through shell companies. The amounts matched bribes tied to narcotics task forces in the 90s. And at the bottom of the ledger, approved Judge D.W. Malik stared at the initials. His heart pounded. It wasn't just rumor anymore. It was paper. In the gallery, Sylvester's younger sister wept. "All my life, they told me he was nothing but trouble," she whispered. But maybe he was just surviving what Whitaker built. The community saw Sylvester differently now. Not as a criminal, as a mirror reflecting decades of injustice. But Whitaker wasn't finished. That night, Malik received a threatening call. "Drop the story or you'll never write again." Janelle Price found her office broken into, files missing, computers wiped. Even Sylvester received a note slipped under his cell door. "Silence or your sister is next." The system wasn't going down without a fight. On the 20th day of trial, the defense revealed Malik's ledger. Payments, initials, ties to Whitaker. The gallery erupted. The jury leaned forward. For once, Whitaker couldn't hide behind his gavel. But just as the defense pressed him, the prosecutor dropped a bomb. "Ladies and gentlemen, while the defense spins conspiracies, we have new evidence linking Sylvester Rowe directly to the robbery weapon." Gasps. They unveiled photographs. The gun now showing clearer prints. Sylvester's prints. The defense objected. Manufactured. The judge, red-faced, allowed it. The case flipped again. Baltimore was split down the middle. One side, free Sylvester, expose Whitaker. The other, guilty is guilty. Don't let him play the race card. News stations ran heated debates. Churches held vigils. Social media exploded. It wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a referendum on justice. Just when hope dimmed, Janelle received another anonymous message. "Look at case hashtag 97-114. Witness knows everything." She pulled the file. Another old conviction. Same block. Same cops. Same judge. The witness? A man now in federal prison. He claimed he could prove Whitaker's connection to planted evidence and tie it directly to Sylvester's arrest. Janelle requested him as a witness. The court bristled. The prosecution fought tooth and nail. But the judge had no choice but to allow it. As the courthouse braced for the new witness, whispers filled the city. Would he clear Sylvester? Or was it another setup? That morning, before the van transported him, the prisoner gave one interview to Malik Turner. His final words before entering court: "They think they buried the truth, but the grave was too shallow." The doors to the courtroom opened. Reporters swarmed. The witness was escorted in chains, eyes blazing. And then a gunshot rang out in the hallway. Screams. Panic. The screen went black. The hallway erupted with panic. Screams tore through marble walls. Reporters scrambled. Bailiffs drew weapons. The prisoner, the key witness, collapsed in chains, blood spreading across his shirt. "Shooter!" someone shouted. Chaos swallowed the courthouse. Inside the courtroom, jurors huddled together. The judge hammered his gavel in vain. Sylvester, chained at the defense table, whispered, "They killed him. They killed the truth." The courthouse locked down. Metal detectors screamed. SWAT teams rushed in. But the shooter was gone, slipped through the chaos like smoke. The witness lay dying, his last words barely audible. Whitaker knows." And then silence. Reporters seized on it immediately. Key witness shot before testifying in Whitaker trial. Murder in the courthouse. The system shook, but Whitaker sat stone-faced. Despite the blood still drying in the hallway, Whitaker reconvened court. "This trial will continue," he declared coldly. "Justice demands it." But whose justice? Sylvester leaned toward his lawyer, Janelle Price. "He's tightening his grip. He won't stop until I'm buried like that witness." Janelle's voice was firm. "Then we drag him into the light, even if it kills us." Malik Turner smelled conspiracy. He replayed the witness's final words on his recorder. Whitaker knows." It wasn't much, but it was a thread. Digging late into the night, Malik traced the prisoner's file. He had been arrested in 1997, the same year Whitaker signed off on a wave of drug raids. Malik called an old contact in the police department. "You're poking at ghosts," the man warned. Whitaker wasn't just a judge. He was a broker. Deals between cops, politicians, gangs. You pull that thread, the whole city unravels. Back in the jury room, panic spread. "If they'll shoot a witness in broad daylight, what about us?" One juror whispered. Another nodded. "This isn't about guilt or innocence anymore. It's about survival." Several begged be excused. The judge denied them all. "You swore an oath," Whitaker said coldly. "You will see this trial through." But the jury wasn't just deliberating Sylvester's fate anymore. They were trapped in Whitaker's web. Mr. Patel, the shopkeeper, became reclusive. Reporters hounded him. Protesters shouted outside his store. At night he received calls. "Testify against Rowe or else." Then another, "Tell the truth or you'll be next." His nerves frayed. He confided to his wife, "I don't know who to fear more, the man on trial or the men in power." The crime that started it all was now buried under layers of corruption. Special Agent Karen Mitchell pressed forward. She subpoenaed Whitaker's financial records, traced shell companies, interviewed retired officers. Every road led to dead ends. Files destroyed, witnesses silenced. But one pattern emerged. A series of offshore accounts linked to Whitaker's brother-in-law. Money flowed in during the exact years of the raids. It was enough to raise suspicion, but not enough to indict. And Whitaker knew it. In chambers, Whitaker raged at his lawyers. "They want to paint me as a criminal? I am the law in this city. Without me, Baltimore burns." His attorney replied carefully, "Then maybe we need to make this about Rowe again. If we bury him deep enough, the heat shifts away." Whitaker's eyes gleamed. "Then let's bury him." The next morning, the prosecution unveiled another bombshell. A newly discovered security video from a nearby alley the night of the robbery. The grainy footage showed a man of similar build to Sylvester running with what looked like a gun. The prosecutor thundered, "This is our defendant. This is proof." The defense objected. "Where was this weeks ago? This reeks of fabrication." But Whitaker overruled. Admitted. The jury watched, unease etched into their faces. Sylvester whispered, "That's not me. They're framing me in real time." Tensions boiled over. In open court, Janelle Price shouted, "This isn't a trial. This is a cover-up. My client is being railroaded by the very man meant to ensure justice." Gasps filled the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. Whitaker's face darkened. "Ms. Price, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." But her words echoed louder than his gavel. That night, Sylvester was attacked in his cell. 2 inmates cornered him. "You should have kept quiet about Whitaker," one hissed. Fists flew. Blood spilled. Guards intervened too late. Sylvester survived, but the message was clear. Even behind bars, the judge's reach was long. Sylvester's sister, Tasha, appeared on local news. Tears streamed down her face. "My brother is not perfect, but he is not the monster they paint him to be. He is fighting the same system that has crushed families like ours for decades. Please, don't let them silence him." Her plea went viral. Communities rallied. National outlets picked up the story. Baltimore's scandal was now America's scandal. Then came the leak. An anonymous source delivered a flash drive to Malik Turner. Inside, hundreds of documents, case files, payment ledgers, confidential memos, and one file labeled Rowe Contain. It outlined strategies to ensure Sylvester's conviction, including manipulating evidence and silencing witnesses. Malik's hands shook. This was it. The smoking gun. As Malik prepared to publish, his phone buzzed with a new message. A photo. It showed Sylvester's sister, Tasha, gagged, tied to a chair, terror in her eyes. The caption, "Stay silent, or she disappears forever." The journalist froze. The truth was in his hands. But now so was a life. And in that moment, the battle for justice became a hostage crisis. Malik Turner stared at the image glowing on his phone. Tasha Rowe, gagged, bound, her eyes wide with terror. The caption burned. "Stay silent, or she disappears forever." His breath caught. For weeks he had chased the truth, but now the truth had teeth. If he published the files, Tasha might die. If he stayed silent, Sylvester would rot in prison. Either way, the system had him cornered. Malik met with Janelle Price in a diner at dawn. He slid his phone across the table. Her face went pale. "God, they took her." Malik nodded grimly. "If I release the documents, she's gone. If I don't, Whitaker walks free." Janelle's voice cracked. "They're forcing us to choose between one life and hundreds. That's the kind of monster Whitaker is." Malik's jaw tightened. "Then maybe we don't choose. Maybe we fight both battles." In his cell, Sylvester was told quietly by a sympathetic guard, "They got your sister." Sylvester's fist slammed the wall. His body shook with rage. "He can come after me, but not her, not my blood." For the first time, he wasn't just fighting for his name. He was fighting for his family's survival. That afternoon, Whitaker returned to the bench, his face calm, his robe flawless. But behind his composure, cracks spread. Anonymous sources confirmed federal agents had subpoenaed his financials. The press hounded his home. Protesters surrounded his office. Still, he presided over Sylvester's trial with icy authority. "You stand accused of armed robbery and attempted murder," he told Sylvester coldly. "No conspiracy will change that." Sylvester locked eyes with him. "You can try to bury me, but your past is already clawing out of ground." The gallery gasped. Whitaker's gavel slammed like a gunshot. Special Agent Karen Mitchell pressed deeper. Her team traced Whitaker's brother-in-law's offshore accounts to shell corporations tied to narcotics task force funds. Millions have been siphoned off over decades. When asked about it, Whitaker snapped, "My finances are private. This is harassment." But Mitchell's words were cold. Private finances don't fund secret accounts. Someone's about to break. Judge. Question is, will it be you or your friends? Mr. Patel, the shopkeeper, cracked under pressure. With tears in his eyes, he told Janelle in private, I don't think it was Sylvester, but men came to my house. They told me to say it was. They threatened my family. What could I do? Janelle whispered, You have to testify. You have to tell the truth. Patel shook his head violently. If I do, they'll kill me. They'll kill us all. The truth was a ticking time bomb, and fear was a detonator. Meanwhile, Tasha Rowe sat bound in a dim warehouse. A single bulb flickered above her. Two men loomed, enforcers, not cops. Your brother's loud. Too loud, but you'll keep him quiet. Tasha's voice trembled through the gag. Her mind replayed every protest she'd attended, every plea she'd made on Sylvester's behalf. Now she was a pawn. Her only hope, her brother wouldn't stop fighting. The jury grew restless. Anonymous threats, strange cars tailing them home. One juror broke down in tears. We can't convict him, she whispered to another. Not when all of this is happening. It's bigger than us. But fear weighed heavy. Fear of Whitaker's reach. Fear of being the next example. The trial was no longer about evidence. It was about survival. Late one night, Malik cracked a password buried in the leak files. What he found made his blood run cold. A list titled Containment Strategies. It outlined bribes, threats, and even target hits on witnesses who threatened Whitaker's empire. And there, in bold letters, one entry read, Rowe family, watch closely. It was proof Whitaker's machine was targeting them specifically. Malik's hands shook. He had to go public. But the photo of Tasha still burned in his mind. The next morning, Janelle presented the leak in court. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just about Sylvester Rowe. This is about a system of corruption and a judge at its center. The gallery erupted. Reporters surged. Whitaker's face went crimson. Out of order. Out of order. But the jury's eyes told the story. The seed of doubt had become a forest. That evening, Whitaker's allies struck back. News broadcasts suddenly leaked a story painting Malik Turner as a fraud. His credentials were smeared. Old debts exaggerated. Janelle's office was firebombed, records destroyed, and Sylvester was transferred to solitary for his safety. The empire was bleeding, but it was still dangerous. Outside the courthouse, thousands marched. Free Sylvester. Judge the judge. Tear gas filled the streets. Police clashed with protesters. Baltimore looked ready to erupt. Inside, Whitaker whispered to his aide, If I go down, the whole damn city burns with me. Sylvester sat in his cell, fists bloody from pounding the walls. He thought of his sister, of the rope around her wrists, of Whitaker's smug face behind the bench, and he swore, If they hurt her, I'll burn their whole system down. That night, Malik Turner received another message, a live video feed. Tasha Rowe, bound, a masked man behind her holding a knife, a voice distorted through a speaker. You have 48 hours. Kill the story or we kill her. And if you try to find us, you'll never see her again. The feed cut to black. Malik's hands trembled. Janelle's phone buzzed with the same feed. Even Sylvester was shown a clip in his cell. The message was clear. The truth was a death sentence. And the Rowe family had just 48 hours left. 48 hours. That's all they had. The masked men's message replayed in Malik's head. Kill the story or we kill her. Tasha Rowe's terrified face haunted him. Every hour that passed felt like a noose tightening. Janelle Price slammed her hands on the table in their makeshift war room. They've escalated to kidnapping. This isn't just corruption anymore. This is organized crime at the highest level. Sylvester, locked in his solitary cell, was delivered the same feed by a guard. His knuckles bled as he punched the wall. They won't kill her, he whispered, because if they do, the city burns. But deep inside, fear gnawed. Special Agent Karen Mitchell demanded action. We should raid every suspected warehouse linked to Whitaker's shell companies. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Her superior hesitated. If we go too hard and she dies, it's on us. And if Whitaker falls, half the city's power structure collapses with him. Politics tangled with justice. Every hour wasted was another hour Tasha spent in chains. In chambers, Judge Whitaker's facade faltered. His allies whispered. Federal subpoenas. Protests growing. Leaks spreading. Whitaker snapped, smashing glass against the wall. They think they can corner me? I am this city. Without me, chaos reigns. But even he knew the walls were closing in. Anonymous threats flooded his phone. Your next judge, one read. For the first time in decades, Whitaker felt hunted. Tasha Rowe sat tied to a chair, wrists raw from ropes. The masked men circled her. Your brother will fall. The truth will die with him. But Tasha's eyes hardened. You can break my body. You can silence my voice. But you'll never stop Sylvester. He'll fight you to his last breath. One man sneered. Then maybe we take his last breath for him. Inside the courthouse, jurors buckled under pressure. One found a note on her windshield. Convict Row, where your children are next. Another whispered in the deliberation room. This trial isn't about guilt anymore. It's about survival. We're pawns in their war. Fear poisoned every verdict they might reach. Outside, Baltimore burned with tension. Tens of thousands marched. Free Sylvester. Judge the judge. Police in riot gear clashed with protesters. Tear gas filled the air. Angela Ramirez, a local activist, told the cameras, "This isn't just about one man. This is about decades of corruption. This is about families broken by Whitaker's court. And now they've kidnapped his sister. This ends here." Malik Turner stared at his laptop. The leak sat ready to publish. Files proving Whitaker's empire of bribes, threats, and cover-ups. But Tasha's photo haunted him. Publish and she could die. Stay silent and justice might never come. Janelle pressed him. If you hold back, you become part of their silence. And silence is what they've thrived on for decades. Malik closed his eyes, hands trembling. Then we screamed louder than ever. He hit upload. The story detonated across the nation. Judge Whitaker linked to decades of corruption. Rowe trial now a federal investigation. Protests doubled overnight. Federal agents flooded Baltimore. But with the story live, the kidnapper's clock ticked louder. Malik's phone buzzed. A new video. Tasha gagged. A knife pressed her throat. A distorted voice. You had your chance. 48 hours is up. The feed cut. News of the video reached Sylvester. He pounded on his cell bars, screaming. Guards dragged him back, but his voice echoed. You touch her, and I'll drag you all down with me. Even in chains, his defiance spread. Other inmates chanted his name, banging on doors. The system had tried to break him. Instead, it had created a symbol. The next morning, Whitaker entered court looking hollow. His hands shook. His gavel trembled. Reporters shouted questions about the leak. Protesters' chants echoed through the windows. For the first time, Whitaker whispered to his clerk, maybe they're right. Maybe the past can't stay buried. But as he looked at Sylvester, chained but unbroken, rage returned. No, he hissed. He won't be the one to end me. That night, federal agents stormed a suspected compound by the docks. Gunfire erupted. Masked men scattered. Inside, they found chains, a gag, a chair, but no Tasha. She had been moved. Again. Mitchell clenched her jaw. They're always one step ahead. Janelle received an anonymous call at midnight. A gravelly voice whispered, they'll move her tomorrow. Out of state. If you want to save her, watch the courthouse basement. The line went dead. Whoever it was, friend or foe, the tip burned in her mind. The next morning, as Sylvester's trial resumed, chaos exploded in the courthouse basement. Federal agents clashed with armed men in masks. Gunfire echoed through the marble halls. Reporters scrambled. Jurors screamed. And in the smoke, Janelle spotted a figure being dragged in chains. It was Tasha, alive, terrified. But just as agents closed in, another explosion shook the courthouse. Walls cracked. Dust filled the air. When the smoke cleared, Tasha was gone. Again. And this time, a spray-painted message marked the wall. Silence is survival. The courthouse basement reeked of dust and gunpowder. Agents stumbled through rubble. Jurors fled upstairs. Reporters coughed into cameras. But the sight everyone remembered was the spray-painted words on the cracked wall. Silence is survival. And the empty space where Tasha had been. Janelle Price grabbed Malik's arm. They had her, right there, and now she's gone again. Malik's face was ashen. This isn't random. This is theater. They want us to feel powerless. Federal agent Karen Mitchell barked into her radio. Lock down every exit. They couldn't have gotten far. But deep inside, they all knew. The kidnappers had planned this. The explosion wasn't chaos. It was cover. Upstairs, Whitaker returned to the bench as if nothing had happened. His robe pristine. His gavel steady. But sweat gleamed on his brow. He had heard the explosion. He had seen the smoke. Yet his voice was cold. This trial continues. Distractions will not derail justice. Sylvester glared at him. Justice? You wouldn't know justice if it strangled you in your sleep. The gallery erupted. Whitaker slammed his gavel. But his voice cracked for the first time. Baltimore boiled outside. Protests became riots. Storefronts shattered. Cars burned. Police clashed with crowds. National Guard trucks rolled through neighborhoods once torn apart by Whitaker's court. Elderly women shouted through megaphones. We lost our sons to his sentences. We won't lose another to his lies. The city wasn't just demanding Sylvester's freedom. It was demanding a reckoning. Inside deliberation, jurors rebelled. This trial is compromised. One declared, how can we decide guilt when witnesses are murdered, evidence is fabricated, and people vanish from the courthouse itself? Another whispered, if we convict him, we're just feeding Whitaker's machine. But fear whispered louder. If we don't convict, will they come for us next? Justice and survival blurred into one. Malik followed a lead from the explosion site, a discarded burner phone with one recent call. He traced it to an abandoned row house on Garrison Boulevard. Inside, he found maps of the courthouse, scribbled notes, and photos of Sylvester's family. Pinned to the wall, a photo of Tasha with a red X across it, and one chilling line written beneath. Leverage expires soon. Behind closed doors, Whitaker's allies cracked. Some fled the city. Others cut deals with federal agents. One whispered in Whitaker's ear, they're circling Daniel. We can't protect you forever. Maybe it's time to resign. Whitaker's eyes burned. Resign? I built this system. They'll bury me alive before I step down. His voice faltered. Maybe he already was buried. Meanwhile, Tasha was moved again, this time to a moving van disguised as a delivery truck. Her wrists bled from ropes. Her throat ached from the gag. But her mind sharpened. She studied the route, the bumps in the road, the smell of the harbor. If she survived this, she'd remember every detail. In solitary, Sylvester felt the walls closing in. He had no control, no way to protect Tasha. But the guards whispered the news. The explosion. The message. The riots. And Sylvester realized something chilling. He wasn't just on trial. He was the match that lit the fire. Now, whether he walked free or not, the city was already burning. Agent Mitchell proposed a bold move. Leak Whitaker's sealed testimony. Force his hand. Put him under the same spotlight as Sylvester. Her superior hesitated. That risks the whole trial collapsing. Mitchell's jaw tightened. The trial's already ashes. We either pull him into the fire, or he keeps hiding behind a bench. That night, Malik went live on national television. He revealed the files linking Whitaker to dirty raids, the shell accounts, the containment strategies. And then he revealed the newest message, Tasha's kidnapping. The world gasped. It was no longer just Baltimore's story. It was America's. The next morning, Whitaker entered court to a storm of cameras. Reporters shouted, "Did you order the raids? Are you linked to the kidnapping?" His face, once untouchable, now sagged with fear. For the first time in his career, Whitaker's hands trembled as he held his gavel, and Sylvester's eyes pierced him like knives. As the trial neared its climax, A breaking alert flashed on courtroom TVs. A delivery truck had been found abandoned at the Baltimore docks. The back doors hung open. Inside, ropes, blood, a single shoe, but no Tasha, and spray painted on the dock wall in dripping red letters. Next is a brother. The courtroom froze. Sylvester's chains rattled as he stood, voice breaking. They've taken her from me once, but they'll never take me alive. The judge's gavel fell, but this time no one listened. The photo still glared on the courtroom TVs. Next is the brother. Sylvester's chains rattled as he stood, his voice breaking. They took my sister, now they want me. Gasps rippled across the gallery. Judge Whitaker slammed his gavel, but no one listened. Control had slipped from his grasp. Outside, Baltimore teetered on collapse. Tear gas drifted down streets lined with protesters. National Guard Humvees blocked intersections. Helicopters hovered overhead. The chants grew louder. Free Sylvester. Judge the judge. The city was no longer just watching the trial. It was part of it. Malik Turner, exhausted but relentless, dug deeper into the leaks. He uncovered records tying Whitaker directly to payouts during the years of fabricated raids. One memo in particular made his blood run cold. Ensure Rowe family containment. Collateral if necessary. It wasn't just corruption. It was targeted. And now the nation had proof. At dawn, sirens wailed at the docks. Agents swarmed an abandoned warehouse. Inside, they found Tasha Rowe, battered alive, her wrists torn from ropes. She staggered into the light, collapsing into federal arms. Between sobs, she whispered, "They move me every night." But it was always the same orders. From the courthouse, from him. When asked who him was, her voice was clear. Whitaker. The next morning, Judge Whitaker entered the courtroom to jeers. Protesters filled the gallery. Federal agents lined the walls. His robe looked smaller now, his silver hair thin, his gavel weak. The defense called Tasha as a witness, her bruises visible, her voice trembling but steady. They took me because of my brother, because he spoke the truth about Judge Whitaker. I heard his name. I know what he's done. He is the reason I was in chains. The gallery erupted. Whitaker's face drained the color. Agent Mitchell stormed the courtroom mid-session, her badge flashing. Judge Whitaker, by order of the Department of Justice, you're under federal arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and corruption. The room fell silent. The gavel slipped from Whitaker's hand. For the first time in decades, the man who judged others now stood judge himself. With Whitaker removed, a new judge was appointed. The trial resumed, but the air had changed. The prosecution's case lay in ruins. Witnesses dead, evidence fabricated, alibis ignored. The jury deliberated only hours before returning. Not guilty. Sylvester Rowe wept. His chains clattered to the floor. The gallery erupted in cheers. Protesters outside roared. Baltimore shook. Whitaker's empire collapsed overnight. Files reopened. Convictions overturned. Families reunited after decades. The city bled but began to heal. Sylvester walked free, his sister at his side, their faces weary but unbroken. Malik's reporting won national awards. Janelle's defense work became a rallying cry for reform. But scars remained. The truth had won, but at a cost of blood, fear, and lives lost. Dear viewers, this story began with a robbery charge. A simple crime. But beneath it lay decades of rot, corruption that stole futures, silenced voices, and shackled communities. Sylvester Rowe was supposed to be just another number in the system. Instead, he became the man who cracked it open. But ask yourself this. How many Sylvesters never had the chance to speak? How many Whitakers still sit in robes across America, their past buried beneath power and silence? Justice was served in Baltimore, but only after nearly losing everything. The justice system is only as strong as the people willing to hold accountable. Silence protects corruption. Speaking truth to power comes with risk, but without it, the system never changes. So if you were Sylvester, staring down a corrupt judge, risking your freedom and your family, would you have had the courage to speak? If you found this story interesting, make sure you subscribe, comment, like, and share for more interesting tales.